I'm Ann Mason, and I'm a member of the program committee for the DC chapter of the National Railway Historical Society. And I'm your host for tonight. And tonight I'm assisted by Garen Goldsmith and Jim Perry. So we're glad that you're here and joined us to listen to our speaker tonight, Bill Hakarin. Sorry, I butchered that, Bill. Public education programs like this is one of the ways that we work to fulfill our mission to expand the public appreciation of railroads and their history through the preservation and education. In addition to these public programs, we also sponsor a scholarship to Rail Camp that's sponsored by the NRHS, and that's for high school students. So if you've got a high school student that you think is a worthy candidate for railroading experience, a week-long railroading experience, let us know, particularly in the springtime. We maintain and operate our beloved 1923 Pullman car called the Dover Harbor. We maintain a railroad library in Bowie Tower, Maryland, and we publish our monthly newsletter called The Timetable. We urge you to join us. If you're not a member of the DC NRHS, we would love to have you on our membership list, and all of these benefits would be yours. Now, tonight, our speaker is Bill Hakarin, and Bill is a member of our group, and some of you may know him from his volunteer activities on the Dover Harbor. Bill is a retired family physician and a former volunteer at the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Museum. Now, last spring, Bill and General Jack Griffith presented a program on military railroad programs that included the rail-based mobile flight simulator program of the Strategic Air Command and some information about the military railroad at Fort Eustis, Virginia. So if you're interested in those, please check out our YouTube channel and see another wonderful program that Bill has provided. And tonight, Bill is going to take us on a rail journey from Baltimore to Boston and provide some fascinating glimpses of what you can see outside your car as you have riding on the Northeast Corridor. So let's settle in and let Bill take us on this journey from Baltimore to Boston. And as he goes with us, he's going to chat about the sights and some of the stories about what you are seeing. So over to you, Bill.
Okay, thank you, Ann, and good evening, everyone. Here's our route for tonight. We're going to be riding the train from Baltimore to Boston. Most of the scenes that you see, the photos, will have been taken from the window of the train. Now, there'll be a few times where we'll get off the train, and I'll make that very clear, but the vast majority are from the window of the train as we take numerous trips. This is not one continuous trip. These are views from different trips. And you will note that there's one very critical thing when you're taking pictures from the window of a train. It's better to be lucky than good, because you're going along at anywhere from 40 to 100 miles an hour, and things come by very rapidly. Now, the Northeast Corridor is very busy. Ridership is actually up now 12% compared to the pre-COVID year of 2019. So there's lots of trains and lots of things to see. But we're going to start at Baltimore's Pennsylvania Station. We really like this station. It was built in 1911, opened on September 15th, and it is a classic railroad big city station with, as you can see, a very interesting statue in front. That's Man, Woman by Jonathan Borofsky. It was placed there in 2004. It's 51 feet tall. The station itself is 71 feet tall, so a statue is not really taller than the station. That's the angle of the photo. And it's made of hollow aluminum. Now, it's been controversial. When it was first placed, the Baltimore Sun described it as underdressed, oversized, and out of place. But it's been popular among some of us. Although much is being done now in terms of renovation of the station, and Amtrak has not given the final word yet on whether the statue will persist. So if you've never seen it, come on down and take a look. I happen to like the statue because I think it shows man and woman both riding the train, and that wasn't always the case. This is a 1959 view in Washington, D.C., of commuters coming in from a train from Baltimore and Philadelphia and New York. And look at the predominance of men. The world has changed, and today women riders are as prevalent, if not more prevalent, than male riders. So I think the statue has a good thing to say. Inside, not much has changed. Maybe a new Solari board or a new type of information board. But otherwise, the wooden benches from 1911 are the same, and the walls still kind of look the same. So let's go down the steps. The tracks are underneath, and let's go down. And here comes our train to head north up the northeast corridor. It's actually technically, I guess, not north. It's more east or northeast. But the tracks curve as they come in, and everybody's getting ready to board. I threw in this picture of a historic conductor. The conductor, as you know, is in charge of the passenger train, and this classic picture shows his proper uniform and a firm appearance. And I thought it would be a good contrast with today's Amtrak conductor. I call this the two-hand double all aboard. It looks like he's trying to say, let's get out of town. And this is a typical Northeast Corridor train with Amfleet coaches. But now let's get on board and look out the window. And what's the first thing we're going to see? Well, the first thing I look for after clearing Baltimore is Mariner Point Park. This is in Joppatown in Harford County. If you're a keen observer, you might see a bird, a water bird down in the lower left-hand corner. And there's this very, very nice pier here where you can get great train photos with a telephoto lens. Now, I'll step off the train just for a minute to show you what you see from that pier. Here's a train that was very historic. This was January 17th, 2009. I actually went down there early in the morning to get this particular picture. It was one of the coldest days of the year. And the reason, thanks to Carolyn Murphy, who loaned me this photo, this is who the train was carrying. Our new president and our new vice president in 2009, who'd be taking office shortly. You can also get good shots along the Gunpowder River and the bridge from a boat. And here's the view if you were to go out on a boat. But this is still opposite Mariner Point Park. Okay, back aboard the train. Now we're rolling along, and we start going through some of the Maryland small town stations. This is Aberdeen, famous, of course, for Cal Ripken and the Iron Man. That was also the place where Carolyn Murphy was able to get that picture of the president and vice president. The next big and dramatic picture for me is always the Susquehanna River and the number of bridges over the Susquehanna River. This is looking up the river, and that's the Route 40 bridge. Now, if you go turn to the other side of the car and look down towards the bay, this is the view that you get. This bridge was actually built in 1906. And it replaced a bridge that had been built in 1866. Now, there's a number of bridges here at between Havre de Grace and Perryville. We've gotten off the train again here to get this shot going across the Amtrak bridge. Behind it, you can see Route 40. Behind that is the B&O bridge. And way in the distance, you can just barely see it on the left, is the Interstate 95 bridge. In the center of the Amtrak bridge is this rotating section, and this section actually opens about 10 times a year. It takes 30 people to open it, and of course they open it at night so that it won't interfere with passenger traffic. There's only one company left that still needs access and why they have to open the bridge. That's the Vulcan Materials Company upriver. Now, when I first did this presentation, somebody said, well, what does that company look like? Well, fortunately, I had a friend who took me up in the airplane, and this is Vulcan Materials from the air. While we were up there, we figured we'd see if we could get all four bridges in the same shot, and we did. 95, the B&O Bridge, Interstate, US 40, and then the Pennsylvania Railroad, now Amtrak Bridge. Let's go back on the bridge, and here we are in a cab view as we're heading toward New York. And look at those piers on the right. Those piers date from 1866. Now, Amtrak is this year, in fact, as we speak, removing them because there's a large program in place to totally redo this bridge. And there's actually a link to a newsletter on the Amtrak website if you want to follow it. Now, here we are north of the bridge, and now we're going to go to the rear of the train and just for a moment see what it's like to cross the bridge. I understand that it'll may be a little jerky, but you'll get a sense of what it's like to actually cross the bridge looking out the rear of the train. Well, we made that across the bridge without any trouble. That was a good sign. Here we are in the cab now of the X2000. This was an experimental train that was testing on Amtrak back in 1993. If you can't see it down there on the speedometer, it says 126 miles an hour, which is why it's a little blurry. Just for information, here's what that train looked like. It ran just for a few weeks in testing on Amtrak and probably could be considered a predecessor of the Acela. However, if you're looking out the rear of the train, you may see other more common forms of train. Here's a typical work train with hopper cars of ballast, some track maintenance equipment at the rear. Now we're between Baltimore and Wilmington, again, heading toward New York. Next big city, Wilmington, Delaware. And many people recognize Wilmington because of the whale mural. Now, that whale was painted by Robert Weiland. He was a muralist who had a real belief in trying to promote awareness of and preservation of the ocean habitats. And he painted 100 whales on 100 buildings all around the world. Wilmington got one. Baltimore has one. This was done in 1993. Baltimore's, if you're curious, is at 620 West Hamburg Street. There's some other big things to see in Wilmington. Of course, there's bank buildings, but there's also Amtrak's Consolidated National Operations Center. This is seen from the engineer side of the train on the north side of the station. And this is now where the Northeast Corridor and indeed much of Amtrak's activity and operations are controlled. We're leaving the station. That platform to the left, as you're looking at it, is facing CTEC. And we'll be passing trains along the way. Real rail aficionados will note the persistence of the former Pennsylvania Railroad position lights. However, they're now green, red, and orange rather than just the amber color that Pennsylvania Railroad used to have. I didn't put any shots in of the commuter train stations between Wilmington and Philadelphia. I was probably getting a cup of coffee. But once you get to Philadelphia, you get notice that art is still important, and the Philadelphia Museum of Art is advertised prominently on the platform. Leaving the station, there's this impressive large overhead bridge that carries freight traffic over the yards. And if you're looking out the fireman's side of the train, you'll see the Amtrak yards. If you look at the engineer's side of the train, you'll see downtown Philadelphia. And you'll notice right away that all these buildings are taller than William Penn. Some of us older guys remember when no building in Philadelphia could be taller than William Penn on City Hall. That's obviously not the case anymore. You do get a good view of the Philadelphia Museum of Art shortly, again on the fireman's side of the train. And again, even further from that, you can look down the Schuylkill River and get a beautiful view of downtown Philadelphia's skyline. Now we're north of Philadelphia. And I like this scene because of the comparison. Look at the space on the tracks and how many trains could be going on there, and then look to I-95 on the left and the jam-packed lanes of cars. There's room on the Northeast Corridor to carry lots of people very rapidly for long distances. Okay, Trenton is next. Next stop, Trenton. Trenton makes, the world takes. The Trenton Bridge was built in 1928. The motto was added in 1935, and it continues to this day, even though I'm not sure Trenton makes the products that it once did, but it's still a good landmark. The Trenton station I consider to be rather pedestrian. It's not dramatic and as beautiful as the Philadelphia 30th Street or Baltimore or even Wilmington, but it does the job, and it has a lot of traffic because it's from here that New Jersey Transit starts to carry passengers. You also get a chance, and this is a photo aside, you get a chance to do some playing with your camera. I'm in the photo club here at Broadmead, and we had a show called Eyeball Benders, which were things that looked different from what they really were. And when I saw this picture, I said, that's an eyeball bender. Here's our typical New Jersey Transit train at Trenton ready to go. It's a parallel railroad, if you will, and a very, very busy one. Just north of the station, or rather northeast of the station, is Fair Tower. This is one of the few remaining Pennsylvania Railroad towers that were once prevalent along the entire route. In these towers, switchmen would maintain the signals, maintain the switches, and control the motions and actions of the train. Today, all of that comes from CTEC in Wilmington. Our chance as we go north to see more trains. I mean, after all, we are train enthusiasts and we're looking out the window looking for trains. But here's a standard New Jersey Transit commuter train. I think these are called Jersey Arrows. And you'll pass these at regular intervals on the way to New York. Here's one of the newer New Jersey Transit. I keep slipping on that. Sorry. Jersey Transit bi-level trains. This is in push-pull, and this train is pushing towards New York. You can tell that we're getting close to Newark, though, because over on the left are the Port Authority Trans-Hudson cars. And this is a commuter line that runs from Newark into Hoboken and into New York City. Here they are again. And what I like about this is the signage on the building. It's a brand new day. What can we do for you? Can you imagine being somebody who worked in New York City and every day you were treated with this cheerful sign saying it's a brand new day? I think I'd get a little tired of it, but it's there. Another view of path, Port Authority Trans-Hudson, as we're now really getting close to the Newark station. Newark, New Jersey. This photo strikes a difference to me between now and, say, 50 years ago. 50 years ago, everybody would be reading a newspaper or a magazine. Look at what everybody's doing. Virtually everyone is on some type of device. We have really changed. And yes, there's women as well as male commuters. North of Newark, we parallel another line of New Jersey Transit. It's also overhead wires. This is the former Lackawanna line. This is one of their catenary maintenance cars as we're rolling towards New York. Pulaski Skyway. This is out the fireman's side of the train. I read that this bridge was voted the second worst highway to drive in New Jersey. The first worst was, I think, US 22, but it's still an impressive bridge. If you go across the car and look out the engineer's side, you get your first view of Manhattan as you're going through the New Jersey wetlands. This meant a lot to me to see this because I remembered when this is what you saw. And it's really quite a dramatic difference. This picture will always be very important to me. There is some freight on the Northeast Corridor. This is the Essex Yard, which is a former Erie Railroad yard. And you can see that containers and piggybacks is sort of the way of freight on the Northeast Corridor today. But that's right before the tunnel. And here we are now ducking into the tunnel under the Hudson River into Penn Station. Again, this is not my photo. This is borrowed from a friend who gave permission to use it. There used to be this little bright spot of sunlight, although I've heard that it's been covered over. It's been a number of years since I've been on the corridor myself. The last time I rode, there was this little bright spot before you got to Penn Station, in which you could usually find the New Jersey Transit commuter train. Okay, Penn Station, the depths of Penn Station. This photo dates back to 1993. This is another high-speed test train that Amtrak was trying out. This is the German ice train. Both this and the Swedish X2000 were very comfortable to ride, but unfortunately Amtrak didn't pick any as their final equipment. I heard a rumor that they didn't pass the crash tests, in part because freight and passengers share the same route, and that the FRA crash test requirements are significantly stricter than some of the European ones. I don't know that for a fact, but it's what I've been told. As time went on, trains changed in Penn Station. This is what I remember from the 90s and early 2000s. Now it's been replaced by the Sprinter locomotives. But now let's leave Penn Station. Well, before we leave, here goes the Jersey Transit out the other way, just showing you the close contacts and narrow spaces that Penn Station is. As we go out of Penn Station, I thought I would show briefly a New Haven Railroad map that would show very differently. If you look down here, and I'll use my pointer, here's the Penn Station line coming out to New Rochelle. These other four come from Grand Central, and they join together at New Rochelle. The Northeast Corridor, as we know it and as we ride, uses that former New Haven line out of Penn Station. As the other end of the map up in Boston, we'll see when we get up there that there are actually two lines coming into Boston still, the one on the Northeast Corridor and this other one here from Quincy and down to Brockton. Eventually, once upon a time, went all the way to Cape Cod. I'm usually hungry by the time we get to New York if I left in the morning. And a picture here of what used to be the way you had lunch. Now, this is not a New Haven grill car or a New Haven dining car, but it does show the type of sit-down service and waiters and relative comfort and luxury that you used to have for lunch. That's not the way it is today. This is 1995 and a display of what the cafe car was having for fare in 1995. Here's a little newer model. This is current from Amtrak's site, but it's not really all that different. You can get hamburgers, hot dogs, maybe some salads, yogurt. Certainly not the sit-down deluxe meals, but it's I would say passable, but not superb. Okay, we've come out now into Queens. And one of the things that always interested me about Queens and the Northeast Corridor was these old buildings that looked like they'd been something else. And so I did some research, and that's the building today is known, that's a yellowish building. That's Eris Loft. It's in a building of apartments and lofts that sell for the relatively cheap price of $900 to over $1 million each. It was once the Eagle Electric Company, and it was the Eagle Electric Company until about 2006, by when most of the stuff had been moved to Mexico, and the building was sold and became the condominiums and lofts, the Eris Loft. You probably have Eagle Electric Company things somewhere in your house. If you remember those sockets that would screw into a light bulb that would let you plug something into where you'd also have a light bulb, those were all made by Eagle Electric Company. And it's now been renamed Eaton Wiring Devices. Shortly after passing Eris Electric, Eris Loft, Eagle Electric, Eris Loft, now we're passing Sunnyside Yard. Sunnyside Yard, the biggest, probably the biggest passenger yard here in the East, serves all of Amtrak. There's an HHP locomotive there. There's other types of long distance locomotives. And there's also New Jersey Transit lines served in Sunnyside as well. If you're a volunteer for the DC NRHS and you volunteer on the crew of Dover Harbor, you may get to go into Sunnyside Yard at night and get some shots like this. And of course, if you do, there's the way you're going to want to go to Sunnyside Yard. This is a 2015 view as we were coming back from Montreal. And as we all of us in the chapter know this is, of course, Dover Harbor. If you're very, very fortunate, you'll get to ride on this little section of track that is probably the most difficult track for a normal rail passenger to ever ride. This is the loop that goes around Sunnyside Yard that lets the trains turn around. And it's kind of a mark of prestige if you can say, oh, yes, I've been around the loop on Sunnyside Yard. Many of us on the Dover Harbor have been fortunate to do that. But the best views now coming up to me are the views of and from Hellgate Bridge. Hellgate Bridge, built in 1917, carries the railroad, which was then the New Haven, over the Hellgate of the East River and provides many, many dramatic views. This is the view climbing up towards it. This is not my photo. This is a photo that I took from the Hellgate website just to show you what the bridge looks like in its entirety over Hellgate. Very dramatic, very impressive, as are the views from Hellgate. And you will find if you're sitting on the fireman's side on the trip toward Boston, on the engineer's side, if you're coming back toward Baltimore and Washington, you get a tremendous view of Manhattan. And you can alter your lens and change the pictures. There in the center is the Empire State Building and the Chrysler Building. You can see just to the left, slightly, the Ed Koch Bridge. Here's another view, and you'll see those red and white towers down there. That's the Ravenswood Power Station that provided much of the electricity for Manhattan. Very, very dramatic views. You can just spend your face pressed against the window trying to see all the different houses, buildings, cars, people. Closer up of the power station and buildings, and some of the dramatic architecture that's seen in the Manhattan area. There's a better view of the Ed Koch Bridge. Again, these are from multiple different trips. One of my favorite areas is where you cross over the subway, which of course here is not a subway. And there's another bridge there to the right. That's the beginnings of the Robert F. Kennedy Bridge, also once known as the Triborough Bridge. Now, if you go to the other side of the car, well, we're still on the engineer's side, fireman's side. Let's go over to the engineer's side. And here's, you see the subway ends right there under Hellgate Bridge. In your top right-hand corner, you can see an aircraft tower. That's LaGuardia Field. And you can see, of course, the river again in the distance. You will not be sorry. If you've never been over Hellgate Bridge, by all means, take the trip just to do it. Most of you, I suspect, have been over it multiple times. Here's at the Robert F. Kennedy Bridge, again, close up. And after you cross the bridge, you're going to see some of the areas of construction. This was a new UPS distribution center. And down in the lower part of the photo, there's a train there. You can see it says Canadian Pacific Railway. That's bringing newsprint into the New York Post. The baseball field. Field one, they all have numbers. And you'll see another big building. Wonder if that's been repurposed. It actually hasn't. That's the Manhattan Psychiatric Center. It looks like a hospital, looks like a psychiatric hospital, and that's indeed what it is. Here we're still now on Hellgate Bridge, but you're looking ahead around the curve. That's at the East River. And now here we are on the engineer's side crossing the East River. Looking back, you get a good view of the bridge. And you can also see to the right the towers of the Robert F. Kennedy Bridge. Close-up zoom lenses are a real plus when you're looking out the window on the train, especially around New York City. All right, now we're further along in getting up towards the Bronx. I didn't know the name of that bridge until I did some research. That's the Jackie Robinson Bridge over the Harlem River into the Bronx. And of course, we now have the interstate starting to run alongside us. Welcome to the Bronx and the large apartment complexes. This is Pelham Bay, also in the Bronx. New Haven Railroad also has some towers remaining, but they're all used for storage. They're not in active railroad control use. But I was struck by the interesting, almost Chinese look to the roof of them. There is one that's been preserved somewhere along the line. I don't have the details, that is open for visitors that you can visit on weekends, at least in the summer, and get train photos from up in the tower. Lots of commuter lines north of New York. The Metro North Commuter Railroad has this type of multi-unit equipment, and you'll pass trains again at frequent intervals, both looking out the back or looking out the side. Here we are approaching Stamford, and there's a SPS rail inspector car just at the edge of the Stamford station. There's a big yard at Stamford, and on this rainy day, we were struck by the number of trains that came in even close following behind us. But Stamford Station with an Acela, this is the modern Northeast Corridor. Okay, we're ready, still into baseball. Here we are at Bridgeport, Connecticut. You can see along the fence, it says Bluefish. Well, the Bridgeport Bluefish were started after the Civil War and lasted until 2017. First, they were going to move the team to North Carolina, but that fell through, and so the team actually was dissolved. And this ballpark, I understand, has now been converted into a park and music facility. But once upon a time, it was the home of the Bridgeport Bluefish. New Haven used to be where diesels and electrics would change power. The station is not very dramatic. It's just a large rectangular building, but the Acela gave a nice look. North of New Haven, the countryside changes and becomes more rural and more scenic. Now, these are the days before the line was fully electrified, but this is again a Northeast Corridor train north of New Haven, probably around Madison, Connecticut. There's history in this section. This tower in New London is commemorating the Battle of Groton, or Groton Heights. It was placed, the battle was in 1781. It was a defeat for the colonials. The general for the British, who had previously been on the other team, was Benedict Arnold. But this monument in New London is a commemoration of that battle. New London is also a big town for the Navy and for shipbuilding, and General Dynamics builds General Dynamics builds America's submarines. If you're lucky, you'll get to see one. I wasn't lucky and didn't get to see one, but I did get to see the U.S. Coast Guard ship Eagle. This is the sailing ship that the Coast Guard uses for training its cadets in sail and seamanship. Interesting story about the Eagle. This used to be a German ship called the Hoch vessel, and it was taken after World War II as war reparations and became our training ship for Coast Guard cadets. It's got a sister ship that is a training ship for German Navy cadets. So an interesting just piece of history. This is World War II reparations. And if you're lucky in New London, you'll see it out the engineer's side. We're now looking back as we cross the Thames River. We're looking back at the New London station. Interesting, this bridge that we're crossing over was hit by the Eagle in 1972. Here's the bridge as it is today with Interstate 95 bridge to the immediate right. Shortly after New London is Mystic, and Mystic Seaport, and the Mystic, Connecticut station. This is a great little town for a day trip. If you want, it's a mile from the Mystic station to the seaport. Not a bad walk at all. And this station is actually the prototype for the Lionelville train station that many of us had on under our Christmas trees. That green and white Lionel station is allegedly based on Mystic, Connecticut. Just north of, or just east of Mystic Station is another little inlet, little dock area. And of course, I had to walk over and get train pictures. And here's a Northeast Quarter train in the pre-electrified era. All right, back aboard the train. Now, some of the most rurally scenic areas are along Long Island Sound in Connecticut. And now you're looking out on the fireman's side as we go along the shoreline. I have to periodically show a photo like this to convince you that I am indeed taking pictures out the window, as you can see that the seats and so forth. But usually the secret is get as close to the window as you can, find the cleanest spot you can. I've been known to clean the outside. And if you can possibly do it where there's no other lighting so you don't get any reflections. It's actually better if you're going to take photos out the window to be in a Pullman room with the shades all down and shut on the doorway so that you're not getting a light from the other side. Early one morning, I was on a Dover Harbor trip along the Sound, and I had to get some early morning shots. This is from the Dover Harbor. Another similar view. We're starting to get into cities again, and it's getting built up, and parking garages and bridges, and we've lost all of that beautiful scenic country, but now we're up Rhode Island and heading into Boston. And when you start seeing these orange T cars, you know you're getting close to Back Bay. And again, it's just not the same kind of scenery. I mean, it's great if you like infrastructure. It's great if you like bridges. It's great if you like big buildings and track and switches. And you can even see a T subway car over to the right. But now we've really passed Back Bay. We're running along the Massachusetts Turnpike. You can see Greyhound as your companion there on the fireman's side. And here's that section of track on the map where both the line from the New York and Baltimore, Washington is coming in on the right, and the straight ahead is to Cape Cod. And imagine all the wiring and everything that goes in now that it's been fully electrified. Here we are at South Station. We've got we've arrived. We've got one Amtrak Acela ready to depart. We've got another one that's come in. And here is what I think is the best hotel in Boston. If you get a chance, take a trip up to Boston on the Dover Harbor. And it used to be, I'm not going to speak because I'm not sure, but I think you used to be able to stay aboard the car. And this is by far the best hotel in Boston. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have made it from Baltimore to Boston. And I will cut this down and see if there's any questions and how I can get out of here.
Well, thank you, Bill. That was wonderful. I have a new appreciation for what I'm seeing on the Northeast Corridor. And I have to admit, I normally don't look out the window. So I need to do a little bit more looking out the window and sort of taking in the scenery, because now you've inspired me. So great appreciation, especially the Hellgate Bridge. I mean, I didn't know what I was crossing over when I took the ride. So thank you. That was wonderful. I just want to also give a shout out to Carolyn Adams for her photo of President-elect Obama and Biden. That was a wonderful picture, and congratulations, Carolyn. She's on the line with us. Carolyn, do you want to unmute and tell us a little bit about what an experience that was?
3-in-1 extended relief formula. My eyes.
Oh, Carolyn, I am so sorry. It is Carolyn Adams. It is not Carolyn Murphy, and I have totally apologize. But hey, Carolyn, I'm an old guy and I live in Broadmead. We get confused,
Yes, I was going to put in there. I totally understand. We do it all the time. And I think there is a Carolyn Murphy. So totally understandable.
Okay, thank you.
So what was it, Carolyn, what was it like taking that photo? Did you have to wait hours and hours?
Cold. I couldn't take going down to Washington. So I'd heard it was going to slow down at the Aberdeen station. So I'm from Harford County. So I went up there and it was cold. I had to wait about an hour and it was real cold, but there were about 25 or 30 people there and we kept jumping up and down and keeping each other warm. But it was so great. It made me feel like, FDR Truman times,
Well, that's a wonderful picture. Congratulations, and thanks for letting Bill use it. That was a terrific thing. So I don't have any questions in the chat function. You did say Hellgate Bridge. Have anybody else on the call gone over Hellgate Bridge, and what was your experience?
I've actually have sailed under the Hellgate Bridge.
Oh, Rory, tell us all.
Bill, could you go back to that Hellgate photo? There's one of the, it's like a view of the river, and you can see the power plant, or one of the power plants that's on the right side of the photo. It's like, yeah, that one. So I was, it's, you can't really see it in the background here, but I went to the New York Maritime Academy, and we used to sail our big cargo training ship up the river here. And actually on the left side, there's actually the FDNY Fire Academy. And they actually have, they have fire boats, and they do, you can see the little red boats there in the background on the left side is the actual Fire Academy. So it's pretty impressive bridge from the underside as well as the on top. It is very large.
Well, that's great to hear firsthand knowledge. Anybody else have anything on the Northeast Corridor they want to share? Okay, I'm going to point to Jim Perry. Jim Perry, I know that you're a crew member. Tell us anything about Sunnyside Yard.
Oh, well, Bill is correct about, no, it's always fun to go to. And the other thing, talking about traveling on the Northeast Corridor, on the Dover Harbor is we came back from Boston one time in a positioning move, and I got to sleep overnight. And that car is rated for 110 miles an hour, and it's it's an experience to try to sleep in that when it's traveling that fast. But it was a lot of fun. Enjoyed it, and I enjoyed. Mr. Lilly pointed out Hellgate Bridge to me on one of our trips, and that is an impressive bridge. It's for sure. I really appreciate, Bill. This was a wonderful talk, and really contributed a lot to my knowledge of the Northeast Corridor. Thank you.
Well, any last words, Bill, before we move on?
Oh, I just very much enjoyed it. I was glad to see some Broadmead folks here. I'm not sure which Nancy it was. I did hear that that was Helen, and I know that's probably Helen French. And Carolyn Murphy Adams, of course, as she'll forever be known now. It's good to hear that you folks are here.
Okay, great. Well, we're not done yet. We are going to have a great show coming up, and that is the show on the drone-based railroad photography coming up on November 8th at 7:30 p.m. Same channel, register at the nrhs.org. And Mike Jonas is a professional rail photographer. He's been working in this business for over 50 years. And he and I had a chance to chat when we were up in Pennsylvania at the most recent NRHS meeting. And he is delightful and really wants to let us know what it's like to get a different viewpoint of rail photography. So this program is sure to fill you with aspirations to take your photography to a new height. And I just want to say that our programs are uploaded to our DC NRHS YouTube channel. We've got a lot of great programs that we've put together over the last several years. And so if you want to see Bill's military railroad presentation, check out our DC YouTube channel, and you may find that and other programs that would interest you. And so with that, I'd like you to thank you for attending. I hope that I welcome the people who are visitors to our DC NRHS program. I hope that you'll join us again in November, and that you might consider joining and get the timetable and other activities in your mailbox. So thank you all for joining tonight, and I greatly appreciate you all. And
Thank
so
you,
with
Ann.
that, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's very interesting.
That was very fun.
Good to see you, Bill.
Good to see you all.
Great. Well, we can have a few minutes if people want to chit chat. We have a few minutes, but I'm going to stop the recording. Okay, Rory, what was that? What was that laugh for?
No, that was Tom laughing. You said, "Go ahead and chit chat. We're going to stop the recording." Yeah.
No, I was able to pull up some of those on my personal computer here of our trip, one of our trips underneath the bridge. I don't know if you wants to see it.
Yeah.
Let me give me a second here to pull it up, and I'll share a screen.
It's a shot underneath the
It's-
superstructure.
Yeah, we're sailing on the Empire State 6, which is now a retired ship. It's
Have you started to share, Rory? Oh,
not yet. I'm gonna pull up the picture first, then I'm gonna
Okay.
hit it because there's I gotta sift through 100 photos here. I
Okay,
did.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was saying, so the training, there are 6 maritime training academies in the United States, and these academies, if you go to one, you can be licensed as a ship officer coming out of the school, which is actually a very difficult license to get without sailing for years upon years.
Well, while we're waiting, I'll recall, Bill, you and I had a nice time riding on Dover Harbor. I want to say it's back in 2009 for the Aprico trip down to into Florida and then up to Savannah. I think you were.
Yes, indeed. I do remember that trip.
Yeah, we had some nice times in the lounge, sharing pictures and whatnot.
Oh, here we go. Look at this.
Ooh.
Yeah, so now you guys feel. So this, like I said, this ship is the very large vessel. You see, there's all the student cadets here. We're all in uniform, and so we're about 65 feet above the water on the main deck of the ship here. And
thank you for sharing these.
Yeah, so this is I actually have a video on a different computer. I'm more than willing happy to share about this one, but this kind of gives you the scale of this bridge. It's just enormous, and our radar mast just barely clears it. And but yeah, sailing up the East River here is pretty impressive. Well, of course, I'm the real fan of the group, and I was hoping to see some trains that day, but we didn't get any action, unfortunately. So
is this a tidal river that you're on?
The East River does have a tide to it, yes.
So you have to.
There's that barge again there, right there to the right there. That's actually the sewage barge for the city. The city of New York doesn't process its own sewage waste. It actually puts in ships and takes it elsewhere for processing. So that's kind of an interesting problem for them to have to solve. Oh. But yeah, the East River does have a tide. I forget the height of what it changes, but it is a there's brackish water. It is mixed. Actually, I think the East River is mostly salt water.
So do you have to pay attention to the height of the water to get under the bridge?
It can be important for some vessels that are very tall. There's nothing really going up the East River that has that issue. There's not like any container ships sailing down the East River. Mostly, this is the biggest vessel that goes down the East River, really. There's no commercial shipping really for them to go to. You have the Red Hook yards in Brooklyn, which is the nearest like container port, but everything goes to New Jersey for the most part. Okay. And, or they sail up the Hudson, which is on the other side of Manhattan, obviously. So, but yeah, this worked out pretty good deal for that day.
Well, that's great. Tom, Rory, thank you for sharing that. That was just fabulous. And I hesitate to call on John Eldridge, unaccustomed as he is to speaking, but when you started talking about the submarine you missed, Bill, in Mystic, you landed right in John Eldridge's territory. John, are you still on the line?
Yes.
You want to have a few words about Mystic and railroading and submarines?
Well, where Interstate 95 crosses the Thames River at New London, that bridge is way, way up in the air. But the railroad bridge is at sea level, and it's just above the height of the sail of a submarine. So, since that bridge is mostly down to allow the railroads to pass whenever they want, they do try to raise it when a submarine's going through. And sometimes they don't. And there's just enough room for a submarine to get under if it properly lowers all of its periscopes. And there have been times when they didn't lower the periscopes, but the railroad bridge did it for them as they were going under. And one ship I know was going under it, getting ready to go on deployment up to the North Atlantic. And they lowered the periscope, but there's a thing around the periscope called a fairing, because the periscope is round, but that's not the least resistance. The shape is more like an airplane wing. So the fairing is shaped like an airplane wing, and it goes up around the periscope, and they properly lowered the periscope, but they did not lower the fairing, and the railroad bridge took it off. So that's where submarines and railroads don't really mix in the best fashion. But other than that, yes, they do build submarines there at New London. They also build submarines down at Newport News too, but great pictures of the railroad bridge. And I've never seen that particular railroad bridge from that viewpoint. I've only seen it from the water.
Thanks, John.
Very good presentation too.
That's
Well,
real
thank you.
helpful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I guess gentlemen is probably more what I should say. Well, gentlemen, thanks for participating. Well, thanks everybody, and good night to
Okay.
one and all. Great presentation.
Okay, thank you.
And-
Good night.
Thank you all. Good night. See you in November.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye.